Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another great episode of the Bluegrass Soccercast, your home for all things soccer, right here in the beautiful Commonwealth of Kentucky. I'm, of course, Mr. Jimmie. That's Mr. Jon. And Jon, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, Jimmie. How are you?
I'm doing good, doing good. Jon, tonight we have a very great show for you all tonight, especially for Racing Louisville fans, because not only will we have Coach Bev on here in just a couple of moments, but we will also be going through a full season preview of what Racing Louisville fans can expect. And then we also will have a little bit of some breaking news that Jon and I were talking about pre-show that we will tack on after our conversation about Racing Louisville. But Jon, with all of that out of the way, Coach Bev, if you are there, yes, you are there. You are. Here we go. How's it going, Coach?
Hi guys, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah,
Good.
I'm all
Thank you
good
guys
here.
for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for
For
joining us.
coming on.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Super excited to chat with you guys.
yeah.
How's it been settling into your new role?
Yeah, it's been really good. It's been really good. I think it's been obviously very incredible for me to have had the experiences I did last season with the group in the sense of the relationships I've been able to build. Obviously, some new faces this season as well, and I think
Several new
that
faces.
yeah. And I think it's just a really good group. Culturally, they've been fantastic. Want and willing. To do whatever they can kind of early on to process obviously my expectations both kind of in and out of possession and yeah, it's just been a really good start. Obviously, how I am leaking in the information and how to make it as digestible as quickly as possible. So, to
Of
make this
course.
preseason as smooth as possible has been obviously a big piece of it all. But the group's just been fantastic. I said it earlier today. And I couldn't describe it more thoroughly in the sense that they're just eager to learn. And I, as a coach and as a staff, as a technical staff, it's very fun when that's the mentality of the players. And so for us, it's just been continuing to push them to understand the concepts as quickly as possible, but also invest in how their learning capabilities are early on in these early stages.
Yeah, and how has that been going? As a new coach with, like we've mentioned, several new additions, some subtractions from last year's team. What has that been like for you installing that new culture?
Yeah, I think it's been great. And I think for us, it's just been, again, simplifying how we're breaking it down, right? And simplifying again what those expectations are and what the style of play is, and then obviously having the opportunity to bring on the staff that I have right now with two assistant coaches and obviously goalkeeper coach Sergio returning. It's been very smooth in the sense of they obviously see the game very similarly to how I see the game. They see it very similarly into how I'd like to teach it. Obviously they have a slightly different approach because we're different people,
Of course.
but my point is just a lot of support in the sense of what we can provide to the environment and to the players.
That's major upgrades. Sorry, my cat is being stupid.
Okay.
Well, Jon is working on his
Other
cat.
side right now.
Coach, talk to us about your vision for Racing Louisville heading into the 2024 season.
Absolutely. I think obviously we have high hopes with what we'd like to accomplish. And I think for us, it's continuing to trend in the right direction. It's continuing to see the growth throughout the season of what we would like to look like. And I think for us, it's just continuing to push in all of those facets and ensure that this industry can be very much so have its highs and lows just very naturally. And I think for us, it's establishing ourselves very early on um, with what we want to look like on the pitch. And obviously, those tendencies and what we're teaching kind of Monday through Friday in preparation for those weekend matches. And I think it's the investment overall from all of us and what we're putting into it to be able to stay focused and trust the process throughout the season and really show what we're capable of.
how does the preseason tournament that you guys are going down to Columbia? Are you already in Columbia?
Yeah.
No, we're not there yet. We leave Friday.
Okay. How does that tournament go towards preparing you all, especially playing, a Colombian team and then possibly another NWSL team?
Yeah, and I think for us, it's just early on, right, where we've kind of put games in. Obviously, at Tucson, we had the opportunity to play Houston, and we've had some preseason matches here with the boys' academy. And I think for us, it's just having the
That's
communication
cool.
as a technical staff to ensure that we're getting the minutes in, how we're getting the minutes in, how many minutes we're getting in, just to get to that game fitness stage. And then obviously, as you get closer to season, it's prepping for the fact that we will be obviously begin playing NWSL competition here soon. So I think for us, it's a great opportunity to go play different competition, and obviously see a familiar face from Gotham, and just kind of see where we're at, see where obviously live in match, where we're at with the concepts that we've been working on. Again, both in and out of possession. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us to see exactly where we're at in this time frame of preseason, with still a few weeks left to check a few more boxes with what we want to leak in, but also have an opportunity to sharpen kind of what we've been working on.
Absolutely. So we've talked several times now about all of these roster changes and stuff like that. Who are you most excited about from the new signings? Is it the Turner who you all drafted number one
Mhm.
with the overall pick, or who has gotten you the most excited so far in the preseason?
Yeah, and I think for us, it's different types of excitement, right? So you bring in players with league experience into the squad, which has been fantastic. You bring in new players that have yet to play in the league, that have been drafted. You're just bringing in such a different, various types of players of where they're at in their career, and what they've brought to the group has been fantastic. And I said this earlier, yesterday, is everybody's in different phases of their career right now, but everybody's learning a new style. With myself in place and my technical staff and what we're trying to implement, everybody's learning it together at the same time. So I think it's allowed for the environment for the players to embrace each other, and really look to help each other as much as possible and support each other in understanding kind of what we are looking for, right? And so I think the excitement level comes in just different facets of those players, like the young ones that are coming in and how quickly they're processing the information and how great they've been in those moments, has really stood out. And then your NWSO uh, players that have had league experience come in, and you see how quickly they process what we're looking for and what they've brought to kind of the everyday trainings. And I think for us, it's just been everybody's been exciting in their own ways, and has really made us look at the roster and go, we're very excited for what the roster looks like.
How does that building of the roster? This is kind of a fan question that I got from some people. How does that building of the roster kind of go towards capitalizing on how Austin Racing ended a match in a draw last year? Like kind of converting those games to wins.
Yeah, and I think for us, obviously, I was very specific on, what I'm looking for the group from a style perspective, and I think it's finding players that you believe will fit that. And on top of that, players that you really believe will contribute to the culture in the locker room. I said it a lot last year that I really, really felt the group was just so special. And I knew that obviously bringing new faces into the group, what they can contribute on the field is of course important, but obviously what they can contribute off as well inside the locker room is incredibly important. And I think that the new faces that have come in so far have really contributed in both spaces. And so for us, continuing to keep that culture on a high, if you will, as we navigate our way through preseason and want to get started off on the right foot, come the start of the season. I think it just alludes to obviously what we would like to look like this season.
Yeah, and I think the start of the season is really interesting because of so many international players that are on the roster for Racing Louisville, right?
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a cornerstone of the culture that you all are building to get players who have that international experience or are on international rosters to get more experience, right? So, how as a coach do you navigate having so many players on different international teams, as well as keeping players who are not on those international teams engaged while your other players are away?
Yeah, and I think that's honestly the beauty of the game is that players come from different experiences throughout their entire career, right? Different types of coaches throughout their youth career, different type of coaches throughout their collegiate career, and you're bringing them all in one place, and then you're teaching them your specific style, right? And so for me, it's just really important that you have the right players and the players that, of course, you're interested in from what the expectations are positionally, right? But it's also, again, I go back to who they are as people. Because if they're coachable and they want to learn on top of their experiences already, it makes the transition just a little bit smoother. And so I think for us, it's just obviously now being in a position where you have different types of experiences. You have international experiences, you have youth players, you have the 8-year veterans, you have the 4-year veterans in the league, you have players that have played every minute in the league last year returning, right? It's just, for me, the excitement level from what the mix looks like is so different, but also so similar in their mentality of wanting to understand everything as quick as possible. And so I think you just talk about different playing experiences, and you talk about, I've already had a few players say, oh, I had a coach play very similarly to this. You have a little tweaks in the way that you play and your style, but I'm kind of used to this. I'm like, great, whereas some players are like, this is pretty new to me, but really excited. And that's where it's really important that you have a good vibe in the group, because if you have that right vibe and that positive environment, the learning just kind of trickles throughout one another. And the conversation is about, how do we understand this a little bit more? How do we be the best that we can be at this? And so I think we're in a good place there, here starting off as we have.
How does your experience as a player lend to that, like getting players to kind of buy in, even with stuff they haven't experienced before? How does like your time as a player really connect in as being a coach?
Yeah. I think obviously the biggest turning point for me, and actually when I wanted to become a coach, was at 24 years old. I went to Japan and played for INAC Kobe
Wow.
at the time. Yes, and during that time at 24, I had played 2 years in the WPS, the former league, obviously before the NWSL. And went there, was competing in the training, and I remember going home my first session and saying, wow, I just don't understand why they're so advanced. I felt so far behind technically and tactically, and I kept telling my husband, I don't understand why I feel so far behind. I played collegiate soccer in the US, I played 2 years professionally. Like, why do I feel this is so challenging and so difficult for me? And that's really where it first started. I reminded myself, like, how many people feel the way that I feel. Like, I feel I haven't developed in so many areas of my game at this age. And that's really where I started getting my coaching licenses and playing at the same time. I definitely felt like it made me a better player, because what I was learning through the coaching lens and what I needed to implement into my game were working kind of hand in hand during that time. But I definitely think it's influenced who I am. That particular experience and that style of soccer, it was immensely impactful. I came back to the NWSL and what I believe is a completely different player than what I left as. And so it's highly influential in the way that I coach, in kind of everything that I do. But I also would say that there's something to be said about the opportunity to have sat in their seat before that I don't take for granted. Um, there's a way to teach the game, and obviously as a young head coach and a first time head coach, that I have such an emphasis on the simplicity of teaching, that I think the balance is incredibly important. What's over coaching and what's under coaching, and how do I navigate my way right in between that, to make it as digestible as possible, to give them opportunities to master certain aspects that I'm asking for. And so I definitely think knowing that and knowing what my capacity was as a player, sat in meetings, or what my capacity was as a player, being taught a certain style, and how easy it is to quickly check out. I think for me, it's a huge emphasis of who I am. The way that I would like to lead is to bring simplicity to it, but to not allow the detail to slip.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
For the audio listeners, the ones who are not watching, I literally opened my mouth to ask a question and I started coughing. My apologies.
That's okay.
So, Coach, I kind of want to pull back to what you were talking about, your experience in Japan here,
Mhm.
because I think there's something that can really be learned by a lot of soccer players right now. So, were you kind of experiencing a little bit of like imposter syndrome? Like you mentioned, you didn't feel like you were where you needed to be. Was it that, or was it something else when you were there?
Yeah, no, I think for me it was more of um, why am I only understanding the game with the ball at my feet? And
Gotcha.
that was the first light bulb for me that was like, I'm really not understanding the spacing here. I'm not seeing the spacing here. I'm not understanding my distances. I'm not understanding, essentially, just to be totally transparent, I'm not understanding the game without the ball at my feet. But if you
So,
actually
it's where's the chess
analyze,
pieces moving?
yes, correct. So if you actually analyze the sport itself and the game itself, is a majority of the time, most of the time, is spent without the ball at your feet. And so if you don't
Yeah.
understand what you're doing without it, it makes it very difficult to know what to do with it. And
Of
so
course.
I think for me that was the biggest piece where I'm like, this is why I'm meant to coach. And I knew at that point, like, I'm meant for this. I just need to take my time and to work my way into when this becomes a thing and I'm done playing. I want the opportunity to teach players to understand everything you do without it sets yourself up for with it, and the importance of that.
How much do you think that kind of mental shift you had to change
Yeah.
was caused by how the soccer developmental system in America mentality might have to change?
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, and I think for me, and sorry, you hear my little one at the door, so I
No,
apologize if you can't
you're
hear it on your
fine.
end. She's very upset that I'm in here. So she's knocking on the door excessively. So I apologize if you guys can hear that on your end.
It's all good.
But yeah, I mean, I grew up. It's a really interesting. I grew up playing all the time. So I actually met my husband when I was 14 years old in high school, and he was playing on the boys' high school soccer team. I was playing on the girls' high school soccer team, and
Oh, that's amazing.
I was training with the boys. So I would do obviously all the trainings with the girls and play the weekend with the girls, but once or twice a week I train with the boys. And then on top of that, our dates at the time, right, consisted of playing pickup soccer. So he brought 4 boys, I brought 4 girls. We mixed teams and we put shoes up as goals. And we would play
Oh,
until the
wow.
lights came on. You know, my mom's calling my cell phone like, it's time to come home. The street lights are on. I'm like, yep, you're right. Okay. But my point is that I grew up on the ball all the time. And then at that time I was also watching Eric Cantona's Joga TV, right? And any of the skills challenges that I would pick up from there, I'd actually challenge my boyfriend at the time, husband now, and say, I bet I can learn this skill quicker than you. And it was like an ongoing thing. We'd just spend hours out on the pitch trying to master the skill, if you will, right? And so I just grew up like that and just on the ball a ton. And it was like a part of me and who I was. And so I think even having that and then getting into more of a team setting as I obviously got older, and then obviously processing the college soccer scene, um, I felt like it was definitely taught and definitely broken down in specific spaces, but it was the first time in Japan that I felt like I had experienced the training being so challenging and the
Right.
spacing being so challenging that the weekend and the games felt so big and felt like I had so much space and made my decisions feel like they were so much easier because Monday through Friday was so hard. I mean, you could quote my husband, and I'm totally fine and transparent to say this. Like, I was coming home crying like every other day. Like, my brain just hurts. Like, I actually
Yeah.
didn't think that trainings could be this hard from a thought process standpoint. But then the games felt quote unquote easier with my understanding and more free. And so for me, that's a huge influence of how I coach, of how do I create a little bit of like it's so much thought, right? Is it one touch and then two touch? Is it a first time finish? Is it a one touch? I want to create so many scenarios that feel so challenging that in the game, they feel prepared with those quote unquote tools, and they're just choosing what tools they're using in that moment, dependent on the scenario.
Yeah, and I think that really sets you up to see things more clearly and to see those different lanes opening up and so forth.
Yeah.
Coach, as we pivot to talking about the upcoming season here, what are some key milestones or achievements that you're looking to have for racing this year?
Yeah, and I think for us, obviously, you know, we want to put on ourselves in a position to make playoffs, and we want to continue to push. And I think for me, the biggest thing is that we have to continue to see growth, and we have to continue to push for that. And so, again, you're asking a team to adapt to the style as quickly as possible, right? You get a 6-week preseason, and then season starts. And so, how do you consistently push even early on with? This is going to be an ever evolving process, but you want it to continue trending in the right direction. And you want to continue to have that buy-in and be a part of that process. And so I think for us, it's like we want to play a style that we're proud of, you know, and I think it's going to be a big season and what our expectations are and what our hopes are. And I think we're just incredibly excited to get this kicked off.
Yeah, we really are. Kind of pivoting a little bit away from necessarily racing. Very recently, the U.S. Soccer granted D1 sanctioning to the Super League, the USL Super League, which puts now another top tier professional women's team just an hour down the road in Lexington. For them. How do you feel in terms of this for the growth of the game? On the women's side, and also like how do you see that in your sense as technically it's a rival league technically to the NWSL?
Yeah. So I am so sorry. My girl is being so loud. I hope you guys are okay on that end because I know this is live.
Hey, Coach, it's life. It's literally what we have to deal with.
I hear Grandma talking to her, telling her, you got to calm down. But she is very upset right now. So I apologize. And it's also her bedtime on top of that, everybody. But yeah, I think I'm learning more about the league as it's coming into fruition. So there's not much I can say about it at the moment. I just feel like there's not a lot of information about it quite yet. And I feel like it'll be something that I can obviously elaborate more on once I know more about, if you will.
Right.
I'm sorry. So loud. Are you sure you guys can't hear her?
We can kind of hear it.
But it's okay. You're a mom.
Right. This is what life is like, folks. This is what an NWSL coach goes through. Like
getting a live view of it.
Heavily, you know, racing heavily emphasizes that you're a mom. Those videos of your photo shoot for your coaching with your little daughter were so precious. It's like it's all good.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. They're a huge part of it all. And, you know, there's something to just be said about, you know, obviously having two girls and spending the time that, you know, when I was obviously younger and the visibility was very rare, right? To be able to watch games live, let alone watch on TV, this type of thing. But now to have two girls that you get to see the environment pretty consistently is something that I'm just very grateful for sure.
Well, I wasn't going to bring up this question, but if you're going to open the door, I will. So what does it mean to you as a mother, as a woman, to be the head coach of a professional team in America and setting the future for not only your kids, but generations to come? What does that mean?
Yeah. It's an honor. It's an honor. I'm absolutely honored to be in such a position. And I hope that the only reason why I ever wanted to become a professional soccer player was because I saw the 1999 Women's World Cup live in Pasadena.
That's so awesome.
Right. And you see it once, and I'm big on if you see it, you can be it. And it's just the visibility piece for me. So it's an absolute honor to be in this position, to have two young children, to show that moms can coach. You can do both. You can be a very good mom and you can be a good coach. And so for me, it's just an honor, and I hope to represent as best as possible being in this role and having this privilege and this honor. I just hope to be a good representation of it all.
And so far, you're very much a great one from what I've seen and all the stuff that racing has put out. To kind of end, so you can go back to being a mom.
I think she's kicking now, so I apologize.
Oh.
You're all good. This is another fan question, kind of lighthearted to end it. What are some of your favorite places or little kind of hole in the wall places that you have found in Louisville?
Oh my gosh, I just love them all, don't I? Love.
Also, don't forget who your sponsors are. I want to point that out that we had another coach who was like, "Oh, I love this coffee shop," when knowing that their club has a full-time coffee
Yeah,
sponsor.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Love that. I would say I'll go food right away, but Jade Palace, we live close to this Chinese restaurant that I think is unbelievable. And I would also say Hammerheads. It was one that I used to
okay.
come to town and visit my boyfriend, now husband, when he was at U of L playing. And we would always go to Hammerheads, and I just think it's so good, such a fun little environment and a really good food.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us tonight. For everybody out there, make sure that you get your tickets for Racing Louisville, and make sure that you go out and support Coach Bev and the girls. All right.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me.
No
No
problem.
problem.
Talk
Thank
soon,
you for
Coach.
being on.
Take care, you guys. Have a good evening.
You too.
You
See
too.
ya.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a good one, John. Another good
It
one.
was.
We have a lot
I
of good
never
ones.
I never understand parents that like want to apologize for being a parent.
Right, like it's just part of
Like
life.
kid, especially little kids, like they're never gonna behave. Like
Right.
when you're wanting them to be quiet, it's never gonna be quiet.
Yeah, I think
So
you just have to accept that.
yeah,
Said very well, John. But I do want to kind of react to some of the things that Coach said there. One of the things was one of the last few things that she mentioned there, and I think it ties in nicely into her philosophy. So she said, if you can see it, you can do it. And I think that pulls directly back into the coaching philosophy and what she was talking about, what she learned while she was in Japan. If you can see things in training, if you can work hard in training to see the future and to see where everything is going and see those moving pieces, I think you're going to have a great chance at being successful. And if that's what's happening with racing this year, I'm even more excited.
I think to the point it kind of speaks, and she really didn't touch on it. She more touched on like her personal upbringing, but I think it speaks overall to kind of the semi issue that exists in the U.S. system, because we hear stories all the time from both the men's side and the women's side when they go overseas to these other countries of just like how different the training is, the training environments are. We're seeing that across all sports right now, but especially in soccer. Like it's literally right now on the men's side, it's if you want to be a top national team talent, don't play in America.
Right. You can't play in the MLS.
You have to be at your peak or in your prime at least playing in Europe type thing. And I think part of that is the American system is too focused on games. It's too and I can't fully speak on the youth scene. I just see what I see where they're playing like multiple games every weekend and they're only practicing 2 or 3 times a week, whereas it should be more practices than games, because it should be this thing where you're able to go into a game like Coach Bev said and it just opens up to you type deal, and not just all right, let's just keep playing games. That's how you're going to get on this system under your belt. It's just constantly playing competition where training, I think, is what we need to get more focused on.
Yeah, and I think Michael Swerkos from BGFC, he kind of talked a little bit about that. But if you're looking at a super packed schedule of a lot of travel, going to different games and stuff like that, it can be very challenging to find time for those challenging training sessions, right? And so I think, for youth coaches, it's very important to set that standard early that training is like your games, right? And to get that mentality going. And I think Coach Bev and the rest of the coaching staff are really focusing on that.
And she has a stacked coaching staff. I'm forgetting her coach's name, but she has the coach that led Tigres to the Liga MX Femenil title now. Gosh, I'm forgetting her name. They just announced her. But some other stuff, they just signed Lauren Millett. I believe that's how you say her name. To an extension through 2026. They just signed their first round pick, their first overall pick in the draft that they had to her contract. They're very much have built a solid roster, which people can look more into through your little preview you just released.
Absolutely. If you didn't see it, yes, John is correct. We did have released our full season preview of Racing Louisville, and we'll break that down in just a second. The coach that you're referring to from Liga MX was Moscato, Moscato. I wanted to give her props, and I'm sorry for butchering your name, Coach.
I can't. Some Hispanic names. I'm sorry. I can't try.
I will always give it a good college try. It's not going to come out well, but I will give it a try. But John, with all of that, let's kind of dive into our season preview. And we've talked a little bit before about the draft and stuff like that in our previous episodes. So make sure you go back and listen to our reactions to the draft and some of the additions that we've had. But I want to start this conversation of previewing the season with Coach Bev. Coming back from the team last year, she was on the coaching staff under Coach Kim, but as a former NWSL player, now a coach, I really think that her ideals and her philosophy are really going to be helpful in helping this team become more competitive in the NWSL. Now, they were starting at a great spot, right? Finishing not far out of the playoffs from last year, making the Challenge Cup run. But John, kind of from your perspective so far, what has appointing Coach Bev meant to racing?
I think promoting Coach Bev from an assistant role shows at least the front office wise to the players, shows the players from the front office perspective. From the players' perspective, the front office believes in them, a majority of them at least. The expansion draft kind of messed up the whole thing, I would say. I definitely feel there'd be players back that would, if there was no expansion draft.
Yeah, but like Paige.
Paige. Themby probably was already walking. But I think it gives those players a sense of like, we believe in you. We believe that this is just a regime thing. And specifically, we believe in you so much that we're bringing in somebody who, from all accounts I've heard of the returners, they all loved that Coach Bev got promoted.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like they kept around someone under Coach Kim. Was like, all right, Kim's just not cutting it, but let's keep the same system and just take his assistant. It was very much like Bev is very beloved by the players. This is the vibe I'm getting, at least. Very beloved by the players. And then knows this team, knows what struggles they've been dealing with, knows all this stuff. It's not someone walking in and having to interview players who may or may not be fully honest in these interviews and all this type of stuff about what struggles they had last year. And there's always like people seeing stuff in hindsight. Like Coach Bev was able to see those issues that racing dealt with last year, the drawing constantly and all that type of stuff, with a front row seat. So she very much knows exactly what to address. It's not having to figure out what to address by walking in or only from what you see from a video. She has the whole spectrum of last year.
Yeah, and with bringing people back Burgess, Kanu, obviously DeMillo, Davis, and several others, right? Like this team does seem to have a good mix of returning talent with the new folks like Millie Clegg, Yuka, and Linda as good additions to the team that'll spice things up. They're adding skill, add a little bit of flair to the roster. But more importantly, and what I was asking Coach Bev about was um, that attacking prowess and bolstering that international experience, right? So, Jon, kind of looking at the roster, what do you think has been some of the biggest additions or players that they've kept?
Kept, I think in general, it's majority of who you just listed. Specifically in your article, it's DeMello, Urseg, Lund, Millett, and Pickett. Pickett didn't play as big of a role last year because he was hurt for most of the time. DeMello had international duty for the first time in her career.
And it's still continuing.
Yeah. And then overall, I think Lund and Millett both are great pieces in general, but they're great in general because they are the only inaugural members left from the original 2021 Racing Louisville squad. They're the only ones left. And to me, there's a lot to be said both for fans and for players in general of having someone that's been there through all that, through all the ups and downs, through all the stuff, who's been there under the scandals and all that type of stuff. Someone who can truly give you this is what this club is type deal. So Lund and Millett are great and amazing players in their own right. They're all-star level players, but having that experience of being in Louisville and with racing for so long, I think is far more valuable, or just adds even more to their value than just their skills.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. I think at times last year, with the struggling to break ties so much, that they needed some of that influx of talent, right? So I'm really looking to see what DeMillo can do to help lead this team because, in my opinion, if last season wasn't proof enough, this is her team. Like, she is the star of the show. She's going to be the one conducting the orchestra as things go on. Jon, what do you think her role will be this year?
I think DeMello's role in particular is going to be connecting a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in particular, at least on the field, it's going to be running the attack, because the attack is the one side that I have concerns over right now. And that's just because it's all new. They're all unproven. Kano is the only attacker really back from last year. And there is what's her name? Davis. She's back as well, who contributed really well, but that's only two people. It's not, they weren't the spearhead of the attack last year. There's not Paige and Themby back, so it's being thrust into being the prime people, in this case with Kanu and Davis, as being you're the returners, so at least right now you're prime, and then it's the newbies who are having to prove themselves. And they got some new guys who can prove it, but DeMello's role, I feel is very much going to be running the offense and connecting the back line to the attack.
Yeah, and I think she will literally be, to take a little bit of out of soccer context here, she'll be the middle linebacker. She will be the one on the defensive end that will be guiding, the midfield and the defense, and of course the attackers as well, to come down. But I think she is the queen of this team and of this city right now, and I just can't wait to see what she brings out of this team. Jon, you were talking a little bit about the potential lack of attack that Racing may have this year. Kind of talk to me about what do you think Turner can do, and do you think addition of a young talent like that, how much influx can that have on this team? Again, she was the number 6 overall pick in the NWSL draft.
It could have a ton of influx. Like
I agree. I think she's going to have a huge impact.
My biggest issue with attack, and this has been kind of proven throughout men and women's sports, all different leagues, is a lot of people go after goal scorers because the point of the game is to score goals, and this person opposite can score goals. The question is, can they score in this league? Can they score, especially when they're moving up a step on the ladder? It is that goal scoring they were doing in this case in college is at the cap of your ability.
Right. Where is
can
the
you
ceiling
continue that? Is your ceiling like halfway in between? So you're only doing about half of what you could do in college. That's the thing I'm at. I need to see how that translates for it. They look like they can translate well. Taylor looks awesome, but does it actually translate to playing professionally, playing against the best in the world? Does it translate? That's my biggest question. Does it translate? And that's kind of the wait and see to tell.
Yeah, and I mean 42 goals in college, 15 assists. That's a lot, but it's not as many as, other like superstar players coming out of college could have had. So it's something that is impressive, but it also there is room to still improve and continue to be better. John, another player that I wanted to talk about was Jalen Howell, and I really am interested to see what role she will take this season with Savannah in the midfield, and seeing how are they going to continue to work together and build that chemistry moving forward. What are your thoughts on her this year?
Say the name again. I haven't the name cut.
You're good. Jalen Howell, captain of the team.
Yeah. Yes. I think I want to see if she remains captain under Bev. I don't suspect it to change. I'm curious if it doesn't go to DeMello possibly. But I think her role remains the same as it was last year. She is a very good leader overall, and I think her role stays the same. Like I think if you are the captain of the squad, the assistant coach gets promoted. That's very much like Bev knows Howell's full capabilities, and she can hold her to that more than a coach coming in could do.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think when you're looking at who's going to get the armband, I think it's going to be between the two of them for that role. I mean, I think Carson could get it. I think you could even potentially see Katie Lund, the keeper, getting it. I think that would be pretty cool from time to time. But those are kind of the big 4 leaders that I see on the team. Ari Burgess as well. Totally forgot about her. She would definitely be somebody that would be worth it. Kanu occasionally. I think you could just keep passing it around. With their preseason close to being really underway, that trip down to Columbia, John, like that is going to be quite the test for them. Just the travel alone will be enough of a test. If you look at what Inter Miami was doing with their trip all across the world, yes, it's different, but it is still interesting to get the team together, to gel, and to build those relationships that when the season gets longer in the tooth, they are more prepared to fight together. Hopefully it's not one of those trips that rips the team apart. But John, what are you looking forward to the most in this trip to Columbia for them?
To me, it's a lot of I don't know much about the Cuban league on the women's side. Not Cuban, Colombian.
Yeah, I was like Cuban. Hey.
Sorry. See, Colombian league on the women's side, they are playing. I believe Racing is playing my Colombian team, America de Cali.
Well done.
Which on the men's side is about mid-table right now. So it's going to be interesting to see that type of thing. As of right now, I suspect that both Gotham and Racing will win their respective games. And then the
You'd imagine
final,
so.
yes, but I don't know. It's preseason type deal. I'm not sure if Colombia, because in the Americas it's weird. Some countries follow the traditional European international calendar. Some do not. Some are on the summer calendars. Like there's a lot of teams in the Americas that are on summer calendars, as well as there's a lot of teams that are on the European ones. So if they're in their mid-season form, that could be something to look out for. That might change how it goes, but I'm still with how the NWSL being a top 3 league in the world. I suspect them to win, but it'll be in the final if they play Gotham. That's the big deal because Gotham's the reigning champs, and they've really beefed up their team, like insanely beefed up their squad. So how they do in that match is, I think, what I'm really curious about is if they face Gotham.
Yeah, and how do you navigate that? Because do you show all your cards, or do you treat it like a preseason game? You know, I would imagine they would push for the cup and push for an opportunity to hoist a trophy, but
I think both squads are going to play at like 70% range. They're not going to go all out, all in, just because it is preseason, and just like on the men's side, there are preseason tournaments where you get a trophy, and like literally, if that trophy gets placed in Lynn, right? You go 10 years from now, and people are like, "What's that?" They're like, "Oh, this is the Women's Cup." All right, how many teams play in that? 4 over a weekend,
right?
Like, it doesn't carry as much weight. There's a lot of preseason tournaments that just get trophies, that just give trophies out. So it's a big deal, but I wouldn't like hang my hat on it as like, oh, this is like a significant piece of silverware. So that's why I see them going in like the 60 to 70% range of that, where it might not be a full starting squad. I might throw in some young people to start in the game. If it's Racing versus Gotham, I suspect more in the semifinals. But they could go 100% trying to win the cup. It's going to be very interesting with the fact that the Olympics are coming up and all that type of stuff as well.
And that will also be another pause to their season, right? Or is the NWSL not pause? I can't remember. Now I said that out loud, and I'm like, oh wait, hold on.
I'm not sure if the NWSL is pausing this year. That's part of the reason, for those that aren't aware, that the Super League is doing its strategy, is because they want to essentially they don't want to be playing during the middle of a World Cup.
Gotcha. Also, sorry for my fist pump there, and for the listening audience. Robert Taylor, Inter Miami, scored. So 1-0. Let's go, baby. Anyways, back to racing. It's opening night. What are you doing? Anyways, I agree with you there. I think it depends on where they're at in the season. If they kind of shut it down, or
they are taking a break.
Okay.
So Racing will play a game on Sunday, July 7th, and then they won't play again till Saturday, August 24th.
Sorry, I'm getting like all kinds of feedback on my end, and I know it's my mic. Okay, I think I figured it out. My apologies for the audio listeners. So yeah, with that break, coming back after that. Overall thoughts here, Jon. I'm feeling very bold about this team. I know that Houston got better. I know Chicago got better. We talked about Gotham getting better. But I think Racing Louisville should make the playoffs this year. They seem to have the talent, and they seem to have the coach in place to really help push them towards making the playoffs. Jon, how do you think Racing will do this year?
it's so weird when two expansion teams are coming in. So there's been so much player movement. It's hard for me to put a pulse on them. I do think Racing is a top 6 team right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they cracked the top 3, but they are definitely, in my opinion, they're that like 4 through 6, maybe 8 conversation.
Yeah, I feel
Did they
comfortable with that.
expand the playoffs?
Ooh, that is a good question.
That's the thing I can't recall because I'm like, they are, to me right now, they are still like they are last year, fringe playoff team. And that's solely because of the expansions.
Mm-hmm.
If things kind of had remained where they were, even with losing the pieces they did, I would say they're probably the 6th or 5th team, but it's solely like right now it's the expansion. I can't really put my finger on exactly what they are.
I agree with you. I think 8 clubs will qualify for the 2024 NWSL playoffs.
Okay, so yes, they are, in my opinion, they are a playoff team.
Yeah, and I
For
think
sure.
you're
They are in
exactly
that
right. Somewhere
5 to 8 range.
I'll go
Under
even
half.
higher. I think they could get to 4, maybe
I need
3,
to
but
see
I
the
feel
rest
like
of the league. I need to see how the league shakes out for like a month before I can say that.
no,
I'm
John. This
serious.
is hot take. This
The
is
Thorns, how Gotham has upgraded their roster. AC Current's looking good, even though they're gouging their fans. San Diego Wave, like that's 4 teams right there. Well, Current here it might be hit or miss, but that's at least 3 teams, and I would maybe the Courage are up there too, and that type of stuff.
yeah. Um, I think they could get up to as high as 4, but I think definitely they should be comfortably in the playoffs. Last thing that I want to talk about on racing before we move into our final topic today, the fan experience. Like racing, this team deserves and they need the support of the Lavender Legion, the Purple Family, whatever section you want to be a part of. Like it's going to be really important this year to get more people to Lynn Family to really get that crowd going and to get that place feeling electric, just like we do for Lou City. We got to get out more for racing. Because I think they have a really exciting product this year. Not that they didn't last year, not saying that at all. But I think it's time for racing fans. Let's buckle up. Let's put our foot on the pedal and let's drive all the way in the stands, help drive this team all the way to making a deep playoff run. Did you like my analogy there, John?
Yes, I did.
But for our last topic today, John, you were telling me about this in the pre-show. There was kind of some late breaking news this afternoon about the USL and about the Open Cup.
Yeah, so at roughly 5 o'clock today, Jeff Ruder, the Athletic, broke that all 47 USL teams were going to fully participate in the Open Cup, and that was because there had been rumors floating around with the supposed partial participation of MLS, that MLS is going to take some sort of revenue cut from all games or that sort.
Even games that they don't have a team featured in.
There was a lot of random flying. It was hard to keep track of what was what, in my opinion. But that led to some people reporting a rumor of USLC teams feeling slighted by the Fed, and they weren't going to participate partially because the Fed was allowing MLS to not participate. I never felt there was any credence to those rumors. I feel like those were people interpreting stuff as they wanted, not not anything that was in my view. I know I'm not the one who had these sources or had been told by someone from a club, but in my view, that was more just some people like interpreting things or maybe owners saying stuff.
Right.
But at least, especially in League One, every team is committed now. All the pro teams and 11 USL2 teams are going to commit and compete in the cup.
Yeah, Coach Powell talked about that. He said that was one of the trophies that they would love to raise this year or any year. So I think it would be absolutely crazy for any of the champion teams to not participate. I get it. You want and you need more money, especially at that level. But if MLS does pull out, this has been my stance all along. I think we have to keep pushing the lower league teams to get that glory, to win that cup, irregardless of who is their opponent. If it's two USL champion teams in the final, be the first time it doesn't have an MLS team in there in a long time. I think that would be great for the sport. I think it would be great for the clubs, great for the players. I just think there are too many positives to it and not enough negatives, in my opinion.
Yeah. And there's various different things. I went back and forth with someone today about the cup and how it doesn't provide value to the MLS. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that. But in general, I will say the Open Cup has survived many different falls, many different teams coming in and out. It will survive this. It may not be as prestigious as it was, but it will still survive this. The Open Cup will still exist in some fashion. And I will say this to the people. Some people are getting a little mad over the threat of the CONCACAF Champions Cup spot being pulled. If MLS doesn't participate, that is kind of the global standard. There is cups in other countries where the top league doesn't participate, and the winners of those cups don't get a spot in the continental tournaments. So as much as it sucks that that's the only way for the lower league teams to get into the CONCACAF Champions Cup, the precedent, like FIFA's not going to step in and be like, no, you have to do this, because the precedent in the rest of the world is if you're not the top league is not participating, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I need to personally do some more research on that. Just to kind of see what other countries are doing and stuff like that, just because I'm not nearly as familiar with that.
The EFL Cup and the Papa John's Cup in England, in particular. The EFL Cup is literally between Championship and League Two, like 2 through 4 in England. Right. They don't get a berth in not even the Europa Conference League or any of that sort of sense. It's this there's no tournament out there where a D1, the Tier 1 league does not participate, that the winner gets European competition for winning it. There's no league that exists like that, or tournament that exists like that.
Well, and I really am in favor of, if the MLS doesn't participate in the Open Cup, let's take that sanctioning away. But I think
they should.
They won't, because it would be devastating.
No, they should. They should take the sanctioning away, but they won't.
Right.
But the thing is, they can't change PLS right now because of the NASL lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. Which, who knows how long that's going to last.
But I think that's what makes this so complicated, is because I think the Fed wants to change PLS, especially within these last 2 years with how much the country has grown. They can't. They're frozen in this because of the lawsuit, because of how legal things work. Because that if they change it to something that's kind of proves NASL's point, that's gonna get courts to rule in NASL's favor. So they kind of have to make the argument with what they have existing right now.
Yeah, and that will be quite interesting to see how that all shakes out. John, any final thoughts on anything we've talked about, sir?
Not currently.
Sounds good. We hope everybody really enjoyed the show tonight. We appreciate having Coach Bev on the show. We appreciate all of the great conversation, and my phone is still blowing up with different comments and stuff like that. So look forward to reading those after the show. If you enjoyed the show, I have a QR code right over my shoulder. We'll also put it down in the center of the screen as well for a Bias Coffee account. We always appreciate any and all donations to that. We also have several different social media sites. We've got our website, which is a great place to go and get all of our articles. But we also have Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. All of those handles are at BG Soccercast. I just got a bad internet connection, so hopefully this is going through. This is a bad dismount. Where was I at? Social media. I completely lost my train of thought. You know where to find us. Make sure you're checking us out on all the podcasting platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you on the next one.